What is up? Good morning and welcome to Start Sit Different Day. That's right, Ryan hosting yet another Club Fantasy show, not one you're used to seeing me on, but Josh is unwetting himself from the hurricane that has flooded his house, and Joe is in San Francisco to watch the Patriots play. To be honest, I don't know who I feel worse for in that situation, but all kidding aside, our best to Josh Hudson as he figures out post-hurricane, and our good buddy Gator J, who is in that same exact situation. But football does go on. So Josh secured me to come in here and host. I have two great guests. We're ready to answer your questions on this Saturday morning. Let's get into it. Good morning. What is up? Welcome to Start Sit Different Day. We are about to spend an hour answering all of your lineup questions. I am Ryan Weisse, and I have two absolutely wonderful guests with me. Ladies first, the kicker expert in my life and should be the kicker expert in your life. Linda, how are you doing this morning?
I don't usually do morning shows because I'm
don't.
much right out. I know that surprises people, but I couldn't pass up coming on here with you and Chris, so I'm happy to be here.
So full disclosure, Chris, I 100% name dropped you because I was worried Linda could pass up the opportunity to come on a show with me at 11 o'clock in the morning. But I was like, I bet if I mention Chris Allen, she's going to jump at this. And she did. My other guest, Club Fantasy favorite, Chris Allen. How are you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing well. I mean, if my name is all it takes in order to get Linda on the show, man, you need to get you need to level up or something like that. I can't believe it just took me to get you on this show. I am completely I'm blown over by that because you hang out with such cooler people than I do, like Linda. So I'm really shocked at that. But no, I'm super happy to be on with both of you. I haven't seen you all in forever. Ryan, I know it's been last Expo I saw you, if I'm remembering right,
in person.
Yeah,
2 expos ago.
Two expos. So, that's right. Yeah. It wasn't even last year. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And Linda, of course, I saw you just last month, but still, I mean, so happy to be able to catch up with y'all.
No, glad to have you guys. Yeah. Josh told me you got Chris. If you want to find another guest or it can just be you and Chris. I was like, I have not been on a show with Linda because our schedules could not link up at all during mock draft season.
Yeah.
So I was so happy that you replied so quickly with a huge ugh because it's 11 o'clock in the morning and it's earlier where Linda is. But yes. I was like, I'll take whatever I can get at this point. You can be disappointed and still do a show with me.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
No, I absolutely love it. All right, guys. First and foremost, though you both are going to point back to the same company, let everybody know where they can find your work, what you work on during the season. Chris, I'll start with you.
Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, a couple of shows each week with Ian Harditz, Paul Charchian, Dwayne McFarlane, doing do the injuries tracker with Jorge Martin. That's a cookout group collaboration between myself and Jorge, which is awesome, being able to work with one of my good friends in the industry. And then also you'll find me featured over at Yahoo as well, kind of branching out this year, doing some headlines from each week. So if you're popping over to Yahoo, checking out what they got, you'll find my ramblings over there as well.
Now Yahoo Secure and all that great talent. I know they brought Tara Roberts in recently.
Oh yeah. So excited that she got the gig over there too.
Yep, absolutely. And Linda, also Matthew Berry Fantasy Life.
Yeah, my kicker rankings go up Wednesday mornings. Well, they really go up Tuesday when I get to them. Sometimes that's midnight. Sometimes it's 2 a.m. So, but definitely there Wednesday morning. And then I also have a fade kicker article at SB Nation that comes out on Wednesday mornings as well.
Yeah. I've been loving that one with the hype and fade article on the kickers. It helps me adjust people who I may be too high on or too low on in my own kicker rankings. I did so well in Fantasy Pros week 1 kicker rankings. Linda, you would have been so proud of me. I was the number 4 ranker of kickers. And then the next week, the whole Washington thing happened, and I forgot to see who they were replacing their guy with. So I never even ranked him. And he was the number 1 kicker on the week.
Well, and yeah. Graham Gano getting hurt in the very first play of that game too. My whole thing with Washington is everybody's start your receivers, and I'm you have to kicker too against Washington. And so I was like, Graham Gano. No, it sounds stupid. And then that game would have been a field goal fest if Graham had not gotten hurt. I was like,
I do have to throw out that means Matt Prater, big start this week.
Yes.
yeah.
I love it. All right, guys, I'm going to knock out an injury report. I see your questions coming in. Keep dropping them. All we are going to do after I finish this injury report is answer your questions. This show gets very boring if that queue isn't full, so take care of us there. I mentioned before the show that I would do a quick injury report, which gave Linda a chuckle because there's nothing quick about this. The entire NFL is questionable. I will mention names that seem like they make sense to mention names. I'll tell you about the guys who are out who make sense. So we're going to start with quarterback. Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Skylar Thompson, all questionable. I think Herbert seems unlikely to play. Jordan Love, I truly feel might be a 50-50 move. And Skylar Thompson, it doesn't matter. So quarterback is probably the least worrisome of this entire group. As we get into running back, let's start with out. Austin Eckler is going to be out of this game with a concussion. Damian Pierce is out with a hamstring injury. Probably doesn't matter, except that Joe Mixon is also questionable. So this could be another Cam Akers week. Jalen Warren is going to miss the Pittsburgh game. And then when you look at the other questionable guys, Alvin Kamara, Bucky Irving, Kenneth Walker, Raheem Mostert, all questionable. So you're going to need to keep an eye on those ones. There's no definitive answer on which way they're leaning right now. I think Kenneth Walker was called a true game time decision at this point. Wide receiver, this is going to take me the longest to get through here. Let's start with out. Devontae Adams, Devonta Smith, both going to miss their games. It's a hamstring for Devontae Adams. It's a concussion for Devonta Smith. Tank Dell is not going to be in the Houston game, and I believe that is the big receivers who are out. There is a no doubtful player has played this season, just so you're fully aware. So Jalen McMillan is listed as doubtful. That's the rookie in Tampa Bay. He's probably not playing. And then questionable, it's probably every name in your wide receiver room right now. Deontay Johnson, Chris Olave, Gabe Davis, Keenan Allen, AJ Brown questionable, which most people feel like he would be out if it wasn't for Devonta Smith already being out. So we don't know if he's going to force himself to play there. Debo Samuel listed as questionable, but originally his injury was called a multi-week injury. So I'll be interested to see if they force anything out there. Adam Thielen did go to the IR this week, if you guys missed that information. So keep that in mind. And then at tight end, the whole position is questionable. And I mean that much more from a fantasy standpoint than I mean from an injury standpoint. The usual suspects, David Njoku and Evan Ingram, are both out this week. Trey McBride is joining them. He's out with a concussion. He is not going to make that Arizona-Washington matchup. Noah Fant is the only starting tight end who is actually questionable. So, I mean, again, every starting tight end is questionable in fantasy football right now. It's a huge mess, but that is the injury report. Guys, let's jump into some questions. And then if we don't have enough questions, I'll get your guys' takes on everything else. But we had questions in here before we even got started. So Z Smitty wants to know if we would trade Brian Thomas Jr. straight up for Nick Chubb. His current team is Jordan Love, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, Rashee Rice, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jake Ferguson. He has MHJ, Charbonnet, Dobbins, Isaiah Likely, Brian Thomas, Khalil Shakir on the bench. Also Puka Nacua in IR. I guess the question would be, can he put Nick Chubb in IR? But let's just start with the easiest part of this question, and that is, would you trade Brian Thomas for Nick Chubb, Linda?
Man, I was just trying to read on Nick Chubb the other day because my boss had him on her bench, and I was like, you don't have an IR spot. Like, what do we do? What do we? And it's a 6-team league. There was absolutely no reason. So I got on about it, and there's just not enough information for me to feel comfortable doing that. I know that Jacksonville does not look good right now, but I still have faith in BTJ. So I think I would stay put. I'm worried about Nick Chubb coming back.
Yeah, I did the same thing with Jonathan Brooks the day before they announced that he's getting closer, but getting closer still isn't any sort of definitive information there, Chris. So gamble on Nick Chubb, or I guess gamble on Brian Thomas. I guess the one thing I would look at is I don't see a situation where this team is starting Brian Thomas.
Yeah, that's my concern there, is that really what are you winning in that scenario? Because I'd say the upside for Nick Chubb is that you could see a scenario where you'd want to start him. Now I get it, the concerns for the Browns, offensive line, Wyatt Teller going down, so on and so forth, make the situation somewhat untenable for Nick Chubb.
Yeah. And
also the fact that Jerome Ford has played okay enough that it's I can't see a scenario where Nick Chubb comes in and just completely displaces them, at least at this point. So that's where it's I could see you wanting to you acquire Nick Chubb and then you want to play Nick Chubb. But with the wide receivers on that list, it's like, who outside of bye weeks, you're really sitting Marvin Harrison, you're really sitting Amon Ra, you're really sitting like Rashee Rice. I mean, like none of those guys really like seem like lightly, even like Khalil Shakir. Like none of those guys really fit the bill of a guy that you're just like, if you looked at your roster on like Sunday morning or Thursday night or whenever, and you're just like, man, I don't really feel like playing Rashee Rice tonight. Like you're not doing that. So like, and even still, even if you said you want to do that, would you really want to do it for a guy that's competing against like Gabe Davis, like for targets at this point? Like, so I guess I just don't see the upside in doing that. So I'm not with that.
Yeah, I actually would probably take Chubb just for the reason you described, that you're never going to play Thomas. So I guess I would want Chubb just to see what happens with it. But I'm going to go to Chris's point here, and even to Linda's point. There's probably somebody better out there that you can trade Brian Thomas for. Don't just go get Nick Chubb to get Nick Chubb. There's no definitive reason to believe that Nick Chubb is going to come back and take over that role. I think Chris brought up that really good point there, that Jerome Ford for 2 years has been above average, and they're at very least, you have to split time with Nick Chubb. Now he's not going to be able to come back and handle a full workload. Smitty was right back at us. Cole Kmet or Dalton Schultz this week. It's a two-ended question. So Kmet versus Schultz. Linda.
That's tough because they both have, like, if Keenan Allen plays, then I think Cole Kmet comes way back down to earth. So I guess Schultz. I'd probably go Schultz there.
Chris?
I think that makes sense. Let's get some clarity on like where Keenan Allen is at. Like I know like with the heel injury that's knocked him out for the last couple of games. I think that's where like without him, I mean, Cole Kmet was running like a high majority of the routes, like earning a ton of targets. So and also in this game against the Rams, you would think it'd be one of the more like pass first or pass happy like type of matchups between the Bears and the Rams tomorrow. So I would like that more for Kmet if I knew like where Keenan is really at, like from a health standpoint. And Schultz with no Tank Dell, Nico Collins like popping up on the injury report on Thursday. He did get in a full practice yesterday, so it's less of a concern. But let's say this is a matchup where things get out of hand and like the Texans are up big. Who do you like? Which pass catcher do you really assume is going to be out there, like still running routes? I would think that the Texans would be at least somewhat cautious about continuing to throw Nico Collins out there, and Schultz is continuing to run routes like later in the game, in a game where I would think the team wants to get their offensive identity back under control. Like they get CJ Stroud feeling a bit more confident. They make sure everybody's like feeling a bit more confident after the beatdown that they just suffered last week against the Vikings. So I think with some uncertainty around Kmet, I think Schultz is a better option here. But if there's any news or if anybody has any sort of intuition regarding where Keenan Allen is at from a health standpoint, I can see you going in Kmet's direction.
My only intuition on Keenan Allen is that he has burned us for the last 2 seasons on these injuries. So I am, believe it or not, the biggest Cole Kmet hater in the room is going to say I'm going actually Cole Kmet here. I did do my last run on my rankings before Keenan Allen got more positive reviews, but Cole Kmet statted out as a top 5 tight end for me this week. I think Caleb Williams really found something with him last week, and you hit it on the head, Chris. I think this is going to be a high passing volume type game, certainly for Chicago. The stats that jumped out to me is the Rams give up the second most points to quarterbacks, the third most to wide receivers, and the fourth most to tight ends. Chicago has no running game. They shouldn't run the ball one time in this game. Just my flat out intuition there is like, just come out and throw that ball, baby. That's what we all want to see anyway.
Yeah.
So. Gerald Alvarado has Rashid Shaheed, Brian Thomas Jr. Apparently he's going to be a popular one today. Jacoby Myers or Darnell Mooney. We have to choose 1.5 PPR, Chris.
I'll go Darnell Mooney. I think that's where I'm at. While I like Rashid Shaheed, I mean, despite giving you a complete 0 like last week, and I know that Cooter Doodle was in shambles like after such a poor performance from Shaheed. I do think like Darnell Mooney, like so far for like the lack of interest in Mooney coming down to the Falcons, like he really has turned into the team's like wide receiver 2, like over 20% of the team's targets over the last like couple of weeks. Like high air yard share, like even past like what we expected or most people hoped for Kyle Pitts. But also like Kirk Cousins has been using him a bit more on play action concepts. And if you read any of the work of the great Dwayne McFarland, like being targeted on play action plays is more of a force multiplier, like for fantasy production. It does increase the amount of Efficiency, like Yak and all of that, would lead to more fantasy points. So if we're seeing that, like for Darnell Mooney so far through 3 weeks, I think that's where I'm at. And I get the Jacoby Myers targets condensing, like no Devontae Adams, like blah, 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 blah. But I would rather take targets from a potentially dusty Kirk Cousins as compared to the combination of either Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, it sounds like there may be a change in that Las Vegas quarterback room sooner than later. Yeah. Linda, who you got in this?
I agree with Darnell Mooney. Rashid Shaheed got 2 long targets that they hauled in. He would have had a totally different fantasy day. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you can risk a 0, if you can risk a really low game, because, like, we knew going into the season that's who he was going to be. He was going to score 15 plus points or, like, nothing. And Cooter Doodle was not in shambles having started Rashid Shaheed, just so we're clear.
Oh yeah.
But I think Darnell Mooney is probably the more stable option. So if you can risk a potential 0, then go big. But if you just want stable points throughout the entire game, I'd go Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, I think the one nice thing about Shaheed is he's doing all of his damage in the first quarter. So at least you know if you're screwed early on in that game, like after 15 minutes, you know you're cooked because he apparently does not score fantasy points in the last 3 quarters of a game. I'm also going to go Mooney in this one for all the reasons these guys pointed out. It's more of a guaranteed volume. Sure, Jacoby Myers is interesting with Devontae Adams out, but the Browns defense is still pretty good. As long as the Browns offense doesn't shoot their own defense in the foot, I don't think I'm too worried about the damage Jacoby Myers can put out there. So I'm also going to stick with Darnell Mooney in this one. Standard league question. We get a few of these every now and then. So non-PPR, we have 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and 2 flex. So we have Ramondre Stevenson, Garrett Wilson, Najee Harris, the Seattle running back room, Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Jalen Waddle. So you guys need to give me 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 2 flex. Chris?
Man, we're starting this person's like whole lineup. Like,
yeah,
goodness.
Exactly.
Oh,
Caesar's putting it on us. That's what he signed up for that subscription for.
All right,
do the damn thing for him.
All right. So let's see. If I want to like take one of the running backs, I'd lean towards. Let's see. The Patriots are playing up against like the 49ers.
San Francisco, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. I lean towards Najee Harris, like over Ramondre Stevenson, just based off the matchup. That's more of that thing because we haven't seen a ton from Justin Fields as a rusher, and the Colts have averaged like over 100 yards, like rushing allowed over the last couple of games, especially since DeForest Buckner went down in week 2. So that'd be the running back that I would prefer out of that group. One of the wide receivers that I'll take out of that. I mean, Terry McLaurin, I guess, would be my preference. I want no part of the Miami's passing game. We just saw from Adam Schefter that Snoop Huntley is going to be starting for the Dolphins.
Okay, perfect.
So it's like I still want no part of that until we see like what that passing game is like, even could potentially look like without Tua Tagovailoa like under center. So I guess I'd lean McLaurin. The deep ball was unlocked like last week for Jaden Daniels for McLaurin, so I guess I'd put him there. I don't have a real strong lean about the Seattle running back situation. Kenneth Walker, like limited practice all week with the oblique injury. So I can't really go either way. So if I had to take like 2 flex there, I guess I would take Najee Harris just because like if it's just a standard league and we just need the rushing production, I'll take that. Or take the, I already said Najee Harris. Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
Yes, Stevenson. Because he has handled over 60% of the team's rushing carries over the past like 3 weeks. One of the highest of any RB, and then Garrett Wilson just for the volume. Although in my wide receiver cornerbacks matchup, which is available on fantasylife.com, I did note that Garrett Wilson isn't really being schemed up targets. He's seeing less and less like out of the slot. And with the Jets playing the Broncos this week, if memory serves, he'll see a healthy dose of Patrick Surtain, who has shut down every single wide receiver one so far. So I have my concerns, but the volume should be there, like for Wilson. At least that's the hope.
Yeah. So, Linda, big question. Any changes from what Chris said?
Not really. My only take on the Seattle running back is like if Kenneth Walker doesn't play again, then I think you could put Charbonnet out there.
100%.
But I would prefer if they didn't rush Walker back. Yeah. Like Charbonnet's doing fine. Take one more. I need him back in most of my leagues, but like don't rush him back. There's
You
no
want him
reason
back,
to.
not just for 1
Yeah,
week.
Charbonnet's doing fine. Just like everybody relax a little bit. So if Walker doesn't go, I'm okay playing Charbonnet. I think that's really my only take. I am worried about Garrett Wilson this week.
I was just going to say that. So I agree with everything Linda just added there. Is if we knew there was one running back, you have to, in standard, you kind of want to lean on volume and hope for the touchdowns. And so I agree with Ramondre Stevenson and the starting Seattle running back in the flex. I am worried about Wilson. So Chris, I want to come back to you. You mentioned that he's going to see a healthy dose of Surtain, and Surtain has been pretty damn shut down this year. We saw good Amari Cooper last week. I know nobody wants to trust that Browns offense. No leanings of Cooper over Wilson. You just think there's a better upside for Wilson?
I want to believe that they're going to make that adjustment, and this is more vibes based than anything else, because you're absolutely correct. I mean, from an air yard standpoint, like Cooper was there, like he was somebody that I noted in the week prior in my wide receiver cornerback matchups that, like, from an air yard standpoint, from the matchup standpoint, the Browns going up against the Giants last week, like everybody should have been playing like Cooper in their lineup. And it's not like the matchup should really change this week with them playing the Raiders. I mean, no Max Crosby, if I'm remembering right, like for Las Vegas. I mean, a lot of their players are making the same business decisions not to play that Antonio Pierce called them out for having a lack of, I guess, I don't know, lack of whatever, like lack of enthusiasm, whatever. Yeah, heart or whatever, and like in their week 3 matchup. But still, I think the only reason I'm leaning more towards Garrett Wilson is that there has to be, like, I'm assuming there has to be a shift in order for them to get their wide receiver one involved.
You mentioned really scheming him early on. Maybe this is the week where they're like, well, hell, we got to get this guy involved.
I mean, because really, other than that, like, what are we really expecting? Like, more for Tyler Conklin, Mike Williams, and Alan Lazard?
Yeah.
I like Conklin, I think, is probably fine, but then Alan Lazard, it's just like Alan Lazard and Mike Williams. It's like, come on, guys, what are we doing?
Hey, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to take that Alan Lazard blasphemy. So
he can keep me out of his circle of trust. With
honestly, he's the decision maker there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm shocked I haven't actually seen this trade question yet, because I was wondering when this would start. CMC for Jordan Mason. Usually, the CMC manager is trying to acquire Jordan Mason, or the Jordan Mason manager is maybe trying to acquire CMC. With the CMC news that has been varying, if you've paid attention. Obviously, there was the German doctor thing, and then some doctor who hasn't examined Christian McCaffrey put out there that this is like a 2-month type injury, and we might not see McCaffrey till November. But then Shanahan's making it out like there's a real possibility McCaffrey comes off the IR in 2 weeks and could play football. So the news on CMC is as ambiguous as ever. Jordan Mason is balling, Linda. So the Jordan Mason owner is 3-0. The Christian McCaffrey manager is 1-2. Are you going to get a 4 now asset in Jordan Mason by giving up a 4 later asset in Christian McCaffrey?
Man, I'm like, the thing about CMC is what we know is he crossed the globe to see a doctor about an injury. That's what we know. And that's concerning to me. That being said, the second he gets a green flag from Shanahan, he's going right in your lineup. Like, I don't know. I'm petty enough that I'm not like inclined to trade with a 3-0 person in my leagues. Like, I'm that kind of petty.
Already went well for you. I'm not doing anymore.
I'm not helping. Like, if he gets better and then I help that team win more, I'll just be more mad. I don't know. I understand wanting to do it, though. I cannot fault somebody for doing it. I wouldn't blame you for hitting the button. I don't know that I could hit the button.
Chris?
I don't think I could hit the button either. I mean, the thing for Jordan Mason is that, like, yeah, he's been getting the rushing volume that has been like CMC's thing, like over 50% of the team's carries, like over the last like 3 weeks. It did drop just a little bit like last week in their back and forth matchup against the Rams. My concern is, like, he hasn't been getting the targets. Like, that was the thing that has made like CMC like the 101 for us over the last like couple of years, is that like he has that elite profile of you're getting over like 50% of the team's carries. You do have that elite target share, like 10 plus for, it has to be at least like 10 to 15 for 10 to 15% of the team's targets, like for a running back to be taken that early, and then also being used inside the 5. Now, Mason has 2 of those 3 things. and that's good. But if I'm going to continue to rely on him for high end like fantasy production, like you really do need that receiving volume. And just like, of course, like going through his game log, 1 and 2 targets. So
Yeah,
I would have some concerns about like trading away CMC, because to me it sounds like Shanahan is leaving the light on for CMC to come back. And if he does, that role, that passing down role, especially with Kittle being hurt and like out a week, Debo like being hurt and out of week, Ayuk like being somewhat slow to get back into shape because of his hold in. It's like all of those things lead me to think that there's at least a chance that like when CMC does come back, we get most of that receiving production back that you're really going to need from a fantasy standpoint.
And that's where I stand too. Jordan Mason is, putting it bluntly, not a league winner. Christian McCaffrey is. I would rather gamble just like you did when you took Christian McCaffrey early in the draft. Just hang on to your old gamble. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, or whatever the saying is there. Pareko traded Brandon Ayuk and Kyler for Justin Jefferson and Anthony Richardson in a super flex. Did they win that trade? I'm going to throw my 2 cents in real quick. I hate Anthony Richardson, and I
hate him. Oh no.
This 4 or 40 output from him, it's maddening. So, but the fact of the matter is you're getting the exact same thing from Brandon Ayuk. So one side or the other, I'm going to lean the quarterback side. So I like the Kyler side better. Chris, how do you feel about Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, I don't hate Anthony Richardson, but I do say that there are legitimate concerns about it. But I mean, let's put Richardson's like career into context. Didn't have a ton of starts in college.
It's hard calling it a career right now.
Right, exactly.
He's had so few starts.
Yeah, he's had so few starts. So like the concerns about him as like a thrower of the football outside of him just launching it down the field, I mean, those were a part of his collegiate profile, and that's still a part of his NFL profile, because he hasn't played the game all too much. Like he has like 5, like was he at like 6 starts now? Like maybe. And
I think this is his 6th start.
Right, and he's finished 4 of those games like healthy. Yeah. So it's like I'll give him some grace and say that there's at least a path for him to improve. But if we're talking about just like right now and the stuff that we've seen, if we can assume that Brandon Ayuk is going to continue, like at least I wouldn't say like improve. I would say like improving from a fantasy standpoint. Yeah. The air yards were there last week. He did miss out on a couple of like intermediate to deep catches that probably would have saved his day. So we can see that improvement like going there like for Brandon Ayuk. And we already know what Kyler is. Like he's like QB3 on the season, like so far, somewhere there, top 5. So it's like I get acquiring Jefferson, who is like the wide receiver 1 so far. But if I'm getting 2 pieces, 1 in Kyler that I know is going to be the better quarterback, and 2 and like the second piece in Ayuk that we can at least see a path for him to continue to ascend as a wide receiver, I would grade the Ayuk Kyler side out as the better part of that trade, because I still just have some concerns about what Richardson is going to be as a quarterback right now.
Linda, are you willing to go on the record as someone who hates Anthony Richardson?
No. God, no.
I don't think Linda can hate anybody.
Yeah, we don't use that word in my house.
I love
it. Fine, but hate.
Not hate.
Off.
I love it.
I don't have no notes. You guys said
okay.
That I could possibly have wanted to say. It was a little rude, actually.
Do you have notes on Deontay Johnson? Are we, how concerned are we for Deontay Johnson this week? A pretty winnable matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Hey, now.
Well, Mr. Scampers, I'm always thinking about Deontay and his groin. Just
I was going to make that
get that on record.
That I don't use the word concern about another man's groin. But I didn't know if that was where I wanted to go with this. But you went
always
there.
On my mind. Listen, I'm starting Andy Dalton this week, so need Deontay to be good. That's like I need him to go. I think didn't he kind of pop up middle of the week?
That's my concern, and that's where I was going to go with this. I already get worried about questionable tag. I get even more worried when the questionable tag happens in the middle of the week. I started doing this in fantasy about 4 years ago when I ended up in far too many leagues. I do not start questionable players if I can avoid it. And this week that's going to be tough. But if I have any healthy wide receiver, any mid-range healthy wide receiver, I will start them over Deontay Johnson, Chris.
I think it's fair that the I know y'all probably saw it, but for the folks if they didn't see it, the DMP like on Thursday was because the field was wet, like down in Charlotte, because the storms like passing through because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
And they don't have an indoor practice facility. That's why Deontay Johnson didn't practice on Thursday. Got into limited outing yesterday, so I think he should be okay. And I was just checking the weather because that is like part of the thing that I do. Chris Allen, FFWX. Like looking at the weather, like both today and tomorrow, like no rain in the forecast. So there shouldn't be any concern about field conditions there. So my guess would be that he would I would lean towards like one, him playing, and two, being at like as full strength as an NFL player could be after like 3 weeks of action. So I'm not as concerned about Deontay Johnson, other than, I mean, of course, with injuries, you never know. The stuff could pop up in the middle of the game. And like if they overexert themselves, I mean, Adam Thielen stretched out for a touchdown and then, ripped up his hamstring and now he's on IR. So just the stuff happens. Yeah. I mean, like things 40. Can happen, Yeah.
The other day I bent down to pick something up and pulled my hammy. So I get it.
Yeah. I completely get it with some of these guys.
Like I said, I just a rule I put in when I had too many teams to monitor. If they're questionable and I can avoid it, I avoid it. So yes, I am concerned about Deontay Johnson's groin. It is constantly on my mind. Wondering if they should send any trades with the current roster. They have one of the best benches, but it's a shallow bench. And then the roster is Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, Malik Neighbors, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Kieran Williams, Brian Robinson Jr., Zach Charbonnet, Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, Brooks, Kincaid. And then as they mentioned, it's they only get to have 5 on their bench with 1 IR. So the question is, would you guys be looking to make any changes to that roster? Obviously, suggesting trades is hard. They are stacked at wide receiver, I feel like. Maybe could use a little help at running back, but it's more of a depth issue, Linda.
The only thing I'll say, like, if you can get Coleman off your bench after he caught a touchdown last week, just find somebody willing to look at that touchdown and make sure they don't look at his snap count at all.
Yeah, let me throw this up here just real quick, Linda, because he does mention Jalen Hurts is on bye next week, so someone on this roster has to go regardless. So your options here are obviously a drop or a 2-for-1 trade.
Okay. So I'd package Coleman and Charbonnet, see if I could get somebody to buy on Charbonnet's last couple weeks and Coleman's last 1 week. Again, it's just the one touchdown. Like, there's not a ton of evidence there, but some people certainly are looking at just scores. So
I think that's
what I try to do.
Yeah, I love that, Chris.
100%. I'm completely with Linda on that one. She nailed it.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the move, because you're doing exactly what Linda said. You're hoping they're box score watching. And Zach Charbonnet has scored a touchdown every game this season. That's not going to continue. So if you can take those two, turn it into a little bit better running back depth, I think that is definitely the move that you're going to make there. Mm-hmm. Scampers is in a half PPR, need to choose 2. Deontay Johnson versus Cincinnati Bengals, Tyreek Hill versus the Tennessee Titans, Jerome Ford against the Las Vegas Raiders. Who would have thought 4 weeks ago Tyreek Hill would be involved in this question? Chris, you mentioned earlier you're staying away from the Dolphins. How far is that extending for Tyreek Hill?
Just given those options, I think I'd still start Tyreek Hill. The only rosters where I would probably stay away from Tyreek Hill is if you did like the wide receiver heavy, early build. So if you drafted let's say Tyreek, Neighbors, Rashee Rice, Deontay Johnson, JSN, if you did that type of setup and you have other receivers who are in good matchups that you're probably starting anyway, definitely starting Neighbors, definitely starting all that stuff, then I would consider not having Tyreek in my lineup. But in this case, if it's Tyreek Hill, Deontay, and Jerome Ford, I think I'd take the two receiver half PPR. I think I'd still take the 2 receivers in that particular game. Tyreek Hill, for the fact that he was actually splitting targets with Jalen Waddle just this past week, now albeit with 2 terrible quarterbacks, and they should have just one. We'll find out what Huntley is going to look like in this offense tomorrow. Or no, do they have the Sunday night or Monday night game? I forget when they play. Either way, I think at least his explosive nature, the hope that they're going to get the ball in his hands and allow him to create and ask less of the quarterback. At least I'm willing to I'm willing to take that bet for Tyreek, and then knowing what we know about what Deontay can do, like from a gaining separation, earning targets, like so on and so forth. I'd rather take those two bets than like looking at Jerome Ford.
And that is Monday night, by the way.
That is okay. I thought it was Monday night.
Yeah, it's another one of those 2 Monday night game weeks.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how I feel about those yet.
Yeah, I don't know either. Chris, I will say, quick pitch to YouTube TV. They give you the ability to put 2 games right on the screen at one time, and then just like flick your controller to get the sound on them. I was pretty happy about that. Linda obviously has experienced it already. This was
I have not done that. All right, I'll have to try that.
For college football, we're going to just stay on this for just a second. On college football days, you can watch 4 at a time, but you can't pick the 4.
Yeah,
and so I have been anti-multi. I've been anti-multi-view. But so Linda, the double Saturdays, Monday night header was...
on Saturdays, do you just have like a cooler of seltzers next to you, and you're just like going like back and forth between all the games, like they're like watching college football all day long?
Yeah, my kid loves it. I mean, last night she was like, "Why isn't football on?" And
that's awesome.
Oh, that's
I'm
amazing.
giving you a breather, man. No, she was like, she was suspicious about it. She was like,
Mom, are you feeling okay? Do we need to talk?
Yeah.
So I told her, I was like, I got a podcast, and then the game starts at 11, so we're just gonna go right into it. She was like, great. Gotcha. But Mr. Scampers, I agree with what Chris said. I'd start Tyreek and Deontay. Tyreek and A-Chain. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. I think
I haven't
both
got it
hard A's.
Either, so. Yeah.
I think it's both hard A's. But those 2 are the only like Dolphins I'm willing to like start right now, and then we'll see what Huntley looks like. Obviously this week it's a gamble. I'm not saying it's not a gamble. That I think they'll try to get the ball to Tyreek often because he can make that offense. He can make the whole thing. So that's who I'd go with.
These 2 have sound reasoning. As I mentioned before, I don't start questionable players, so I would go Tyreek and Jerome Ford, though Ford is also questionable, but he was able to get off the injury report yesterday. So that's where I'm going with that one. Dice Dealer has Mixon, Moss, Dobbins, and Charbonnet, 2 running backs we have to start from this group. Obviously, we don't quite have the injury expertise on Joe Mixon quite yet. Linda, where are you going, knowing that Mixon is up in the air?
Man, and I think the Chargers are not going to look good this week. That offensive line, bad. Joe Alt is the only positive, and he's questionable. So that makes me worried about I think it would be a terrible business decision for Justin Herbert to get behind that line. So they may run the ball a lot, but I just don't think it's going to be very effective. I'd probably go Moss and Charbonnet.
Chris?
I think that's where I'm at too. Like the Chargers going at like whether it's Herbert or is it Taylor Heineke who's behind Herbert?
Yeah, Heineke came in right in. He moved ahead of Easton Stick immediately.
Yeah, and against the Chiefs defense, not all that interested in playing Dobbins. So yeah, I'm definitely with Lind on that one. I'd probably go Moss Sharps.
Again, I don't like starting questionable players, so I don't love Charbonnet in the matchup this week, especially when we don't know what's going on with Kenneth Walker. But I'm going to go with those 2 players for all the same reasons. You cannot start a Charger this week. Not a single one of them. Just stay far, far away from that matchup. Wendy wanted to give a shout out to Josh Hudson and all of our friends that are affected by the hurricane. For those not aware, if you check Faith Enos's Twitter at @FF_leap of faith, she has a GoFundMe set up for Josh. She lost a lot in his apartment flooding, and if you have something to give, it'd be nice if you give it. And she's also happy to see her girl Lindell. For those who don't know Linda's Twitter handle, I believe it's under her picture here. If I get the comment off the screen, nobody knows Linda's name is actually Linda because they think she's Lindell Lyons, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. If any of you guys are willing to answer this, I don't fucking know, man. I'm not an injury expert. I assume he's going to play. It's a division rival. Chris, do you have an opinion on whether or not we'll see Alvin Kamara this week?
I think he's going to play. The thing that I have a problem with is like, is it going to matter? So if it's in a PPR league, okay, cool. Like I understand, like especially with Chris Olave like pulling up with a hamstring injury like just yesterday. I think like A.T. Perry like also was on the injury report.
Already ruled out.
not
I didn't even
playing.
mention him. Yeah, he has not played a game this season. I was a big A.T. Perry guy coming into the season because I love tall wide receivers, and he has let me down thus far.
Cedric Wilson like also on the injury report. So we're talking about like Bub Means is going to be like a heavy target earner for Derek Carr. So it's like if Kamara's out there in a PPR league, I think you're playing him. But I think the problem also like comes in is that Cesar Ruiz, their starting center, is going to be out for this game. I think they already have like another. No, they're starting guard. I think it's their center that's also going to be out. Like 2 starting offensive linemen for the Saints are supposed to be out today. So that's why I'm wondering, like, even if he does play, does it matter? So unless you're in a PPR league, I'm at least entertaining other options than Kamara for tomorrow.
Linda?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Going to play. But I agree with Chris. I think he will. Boy, I did not realize the Saints had 2 starting offensive linemen out, though.
Yeah, it's starting to look a little rough there for New Orleans after that hot start.
Yep.
But Taysom Hill back this week, and he was clearly the the reason that offense was jiving. So.
Exactly, the glue that holds the thing together.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd start Kamara if he's playing.
Yeah, as a flex play, that tells me you have 2 good running backs. That's about where I'm listing Kamara this week is more of a flex play. So I'm okay with it, even with the questionable tag. But I would also be looking for someone who is less questionable. Linda Hunter wants us to pick 2 wide receivers and a flex. He has Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison, Tyreek Hill, Chuba Hubbard, Khalil Shakir, Terry McLaurin. This feels like a Linda question. There's a lot of names in there that that you're probably
a lot of Oklahoma State names, aren't there?
Yeah.
You're starting Marvin Harrison Jr. That Washington defense, we talked about it earlier, like start your wide receivers against them, start your kickers. So you've got to start MHJ. I don't know how you could bench him at this point. I think he's already, like him and Malik Neighbors are the 2 rookie wide receivers that like they're not going back on my bench. So starting him, I'd probably go MH, Tyreek, and Shakir, I think, is where I would go.
Chris?
So if this is a PPR league, I would consider like Marvin Harrison Jr. for sure.
Yep.
I would consider one of JSN or Khalil Shakir like over Tyreek Hill. I would consider it. JSN like does have the easiest matchup like of the trio of wide receivers for Seattle, going up against, I think it's going to be Amik Robertson or Robinson, the Lions nickel corner this weekend. And the Lions have been at least like somewhat stingy against like perimeter receivers. Now, I don't think DK Metcalf is going to be like a bad player or anything like that. I mean, although he has been like really surviving off of long touchdowns, but with how high or how many targets JSN has been earning over the past couple of weeks, I would entertain the idea in a PPR league of playing him over Tyreek, because at least there's a chance we're getting that volume. And the same thing for Shakir, like outside of Dalton and Dalton Kincaid, like they are like the 2 highest target earners for Josh Allen, and what should be like a fairly we're assuming is going to be like a decent matchup between like them and the Baltimore Ravens. So like I would take those, but other than that, like I'm in line with where Linda was at.
Well, Linda said she would start Tyreek, and that's what I want to throw back at you. Would you start McLaurin when you said you would consider the 2 PPR guys over Tyreek? Is McLaurin the other start for you for sure?
Yes, 100%. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in this weekend's matchup against the Cardinals, who also lost, one of their linebackers with a torn triceps, if memory serves. I think that was announced on Wednesday. That should be, I mean, a very advantageous match. So MHJ and McLaurin for sure, and then it's just Tyreek. If it's PPR, I would just look at JSN or Shakir like over Tyreek.
And that's kind of where I stand as well. Shakir is the one who jumps off at me. I feel like he's establishing himself more and more each week, but definitely a better PPR play than he is as you start to scroll down on half PPR and things along those lines.
Yep.
Still sticking with JSN then, Chris, you mentioned it could be a good matchup, and then we kind of talked about our distrust of Rashid Shaheed, where it's a 0 or it's a 20-point touchdown in the first quarter. So JSN or Rashid Shaheed in a full PPR.
I guess the only thing I would caveat this is like, so let's say you were one of the poor souls that were playing against Malik Neighbors from Thursday night.
Yeah, you need those points.
And you need those points, and you need those explosive plays. I would consider Shaheed over JSN. Like in that, so if it's in that context, which I have a couple of teams where I did go up against Malik Neighbors.
Good point.
That's where I would consider Shaheed like over JSN.
Linda?
I forgot I was muted because I was
you're
clenching
fine.
my eyes. It's I totally agree. I would go just like I said earlier. If you need points or you can risk going big, go big. But if you just need 10 to 12 points, I can ride it out.
And then I'll pop this up on the screen before I come back to Chris. Dan Campbell announced Sam Laporta is good to go on Monday. So Linda, we have Laporta and Kyle Pitts as the thing there. And Pitts has a nice matchup against the Saints. Laporta's done a whole lot of nothing. Not that Pitts has done a whole lot of anything. But
yeah, man. I don't know. Laporta, I guess, because I don't know. That's what I got for you.
That's fair.
The tight end one will be some guy I've never heard of before. So
that is 100% correct.
I was gonna say
it's gonna be Brenton Strange.
Yeah, Vibes answers are absolutely acceptable and starts a different day. It's early and who the fuck knows what's going on with these tight ends. Chris, you got a feeling on these two?
No, I will just go Laporta, and this is more of a vibes based like type of take. Is that they're like Jared Goff hasn't looked all that well from a quarterbacking standpoint over the last couple of weeks. I think like the team has done well, but like Jared Goff, like in terms of like passing once they get into the red zone, like it hasn't really been there from a completion percentage standpoint, just from an efficiency standpoint. Didn't he like throw an interception like in the red zone this past week? Yeah. So it's like that portion of it, I think, is one thing that Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell will probably want to try and fix. And if and with the outside, like the perimeter corners, the duo that Seattle has like in this Mike McDonald like defense, if they do get in the red zone, which I'm assuming they are going to, it would make sense for them to try and like move to the interior, and that's where Laporta like can like kind of make his hay like as a fantasy producer. So if they want to fix like two things, like one, get Jared Goff more comfortable, and two, being able to score in the red zone, like from a passing point standpoint, Laporta runs the routes that would probably give him the more advantageous defensive matchup versus trying to test either one of was Tariq Woolen and I forget who the CB Witherspoon. So I think that would make the most sense in order to accomplish both of those tasks.
These two are much smarter than me. I'll tell you that every single time I answer a question, but I'm going to go the opposite route here. I like Kyle Pitts this week. I know we've been saying that for 4 years. I think he can get behind the Saints, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Chris, Daniel Capps has to start one in a PPR. Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Khalil Shakir. Christian Kirk, one good week, works his way back into the conversation. You got to love seeing that. But I think do we need to spend a lot of time on this? It's full PPR, so maybe, but I think we all love Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, that's it. It's McLaurin, it's Shakir, and then it's Christian Kirk for me. I want no part of this Jaguars passing game for the time being. I'm so frustrated with like the way the team is built to the way that Trevor Lawrence is playing. It's just negative vibes all over the place in Jacksonville right now.
Yeah, I saw Linda shaking her head. Yes, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this one. You have to have, if you have players available in that Arizona-Washington matchup, you get them into your lineup. So Linda, I'll let you jump in for Jonathan Santiago here. He has to sit one out of Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jacoby Myers, and Christian Watson. So we're benching one of these guys. It is a full PPR league.
I am probably benching Christian Watson of those three. Because listen, Minnesota's for real. I don't want to believe it, but I think we have to at this point. So we don't know who's going to be the quarterback. I think I'm sitting Christian Watson.
That's it for me. The quarterback issue really pushes me here. Obviously, the Raiders quarterback situation, not great, Chris, but it's probably better from a passing.
I think the AOC and Gardner Minshew could swing and go out there and play, and you wouldn't know. I just think they're the same quarter. I'm not convinced they're different people at this point.
That's absolutely fair. I've also never heard Aiden O'Connell called AOC, so that threw me off completely.
Yes.
You're the first one I've caught on that one. But anyway, Chris, you got to bench one of these guys.
100%, like with sitting like Christian Watson, like even if it has been, even if it's going to be Malik Willis, so I do think there is like generally some concern about like tossing tossing Jordan Love out there in his first game against Brian Flores, who's like a goddamn madman, like from a defensive standpoint. Vikings have been one of the more like blitz heavy defenses in the league so far. So if you want to put your franchise quarterback that you just extended out there against a team that wants to try and put as much pressure on the quarterback as possible, you go right ahead. But at least for Christian Watson, even while it has been Malik Willis, like it's been Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed. Those are the only two even like remotely viable wide receivers like for the Packers so far. Christian Watson's still sitting at like a 10-11% target share of the season so far. Like I need to see it before I really feel comfortable starting Watson.
Yeah, you're not starting Watson in a full PPR, maybe a standard league, and I still don't know if I would go it over these two.
Yeah.
I feel like his touchdown upside is the same as the other two just based on the volume. Mm-hmm. And then Santiago also has an open slot to stash. Would you prefer Cordarrelle Patterson, Trey Benson, or Ray Davis? I don't think you could find three running backs on different ends of the spectrum there. Two young guys who are unproven, and Cordarrelle Patterson, who we know exactly what he is at this point. Obviously, Patterson's name coming up because Jaylen Warren dealing with an injury and is going to miss this week. So, Chris, who are you stashing of this trio?
It's Ray Davis. I mean, he plays in the better offense. We know what his role is going to be. And also he's been earning some targets like here and there as well. I mean, it's not a ton. I'm not saying he has like contingent value, even as like a potential flex or anything like that. But like, if he's also getting like somewhat involved in this like spread out passing game, like for Josh Allen, I look at the quarterbacks that each of these guys are attached to and like, just give me the dude that's attached to like the quarterback one.
Linda?
Yeah, totally agree.
I might go Benson just because I'm betting against James Conner. I love James Cook. So Benson is interesting, but I agree. It's Ray Davis. You want a part of that Buffalo offense just as it stands right now.
Mm-hmm.
Dan says, which defense should he drop to pick the Browns defense up? He has the Texans and Bears, or should he not drop any? I love fantasy defense. I have the Texans and Bears both rated ahead of the Browns this week. I would not drop either for those guys. Linda, do you feel any way about that?
I am so bad at defense special teams picking. You don't want my opinion, so just listen to Ryan.
Chris?
I mean, so like dropping them to pick up the Browns. Am I understanding that question?
No, he has to drop the Browns to pick one of these two up.
Okay, gotcha. I would like.
Oh no, I apologize. He has to drop one of these two. He has the Texans and the Bears, so he has to drop one of these to add the Browns.
Yeah, I don't think I want to add the Browns defense.
That's kind of where I stand too. They haven't done anything earth-shattering, and as long as their offense keeps putting them in bad situations, it's not really going to work out super great for fantasy.
I can understand it. Yeah, I can understand it for tomorrow going up against like Aiden O'Connell and like like Gardner Minshew or whomever. But next week they play the Commanders, who like what's the stat that's been thrown out that they haven't punted like at all this season. Yeah. So less inclined.
Yeah. That's kind of where I stand as well. Guys, I see all of your questions in about 3 minutes. We're going to go into a lightning round where I'm just going to have these guys answer questions because I do not keep people for more than an hour on Saturday morning. So you will not get great analysis in the last 5 minutes, just so everyone is fully aware of how this show is going to end. Are we worried about Jamar Chase? I feel like this is a question great for you, Chris. They are 0-3 in the Bengals, they are 0-3 in fantasy right now. And it's just worrisome that we haven't seen Chase stand out, but I feel like we saw enough last week that I'm not that much worried about him.
No, not that much worried about him. I know he popped up like earlier in the week, like with a shoulder injury, full practice, like afterwards. So no concern there. I mean, 20% of the team's targets, majority of the team's air yards. Like I have no concern. This is also a Bengals team that's first in pass rate over expectation. And for all the concerns about like, what was it? Water bottle gate from a couple of weeks ago when Joe Burrow couldn't lift up his like water bottle because everybody thought like his wrist was still jacked up and all that stuff's gone. I mean, for as many dropbacks as the Bengals are going to have throughout the season, while I wish they were 3-0 instead of 0-3 for my own mental health stake, but the passing volume is going to continue to be there week in and week out. So no, I have no concerns about Jamar Chase.
And anything to add?
Yeah, I totally agree. Cincinnati's defense going to keep their offense passing in games. So, sorry.
Browns situation. The Browns offense is hurting their defense. The Bengals defense is helping their offense.
For fantasy, not for my mental health.
No, certainly not. Back-to-back questions with this. So people want to know if we're worried about A.J. Brown or are we starting A.J. Brown if he plays. So I have Joe Ortiz, who has the option to throw out T. Higgins or Rashid Shaheed if A.J. Brown doesn't play. So let's start with Chris, are you playing AJ Brown if he's active? And if you have to choose between one of these two, who would you go with instead?
I'm starting him if he plays over 30% of the team's targets in the 1 week where he was healthy. If the team's going to put him out there knowing they have a bye next week, that seems one like bad process. But if they're going to do that, then I'm starting him. But if you want to replace him with anybody else, I'm playing T. He did look fine. Came out of the game this past week healthy. Did miss out on a couple of big plays that probably would have made this an easier decision for you. But just given the fact that he was immediately put in there, went into that wide receiver 2 role, looked good in it last week's game against the Commanders. I would think Higgins would be the guy to play. Unless, again, context, if you played against Malik Neighbors, you need Shaheed, you need the explosive, all that other stuff like we were saying earlier about Shaheed. That's where I would take Higgins.
Linda, Higgins or Shaheed if AJ Brown can't go?
I'm going Higgins. Also, I'd just like to say Nick Sirianni seems like the kind of motherfucker that would say that a player was playing and he gets one snap and then we don't see him the rest. He seems like that kind of guy.
Oh, you're right. Dang, yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
But
yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Yeah.
Same situation. They have AJ Brown. If AJ Brown does not play, McLaurin, Williams, Spears, or White, I'm going to take a step further. I'm starting McLaurin even over a questionable AJ Brown because, as I've mentioned, that is my process. Chris, any difference there?
No difference there. I'm with you.
Linda?
Yep.
All right, guys, we are going to get into the lightning round so I can get my guest out of here at the top of the hour. You guys do not need analysis. Just go ahead and answer the questions. We got to start 3 out of Moss, Pollard, Chuba, and Keenan Allen. Chris?
I'll take the
That's
first
what?
one.
Bench 1.
I'll take the first 3.
Yep, I will also take the first 3 because I don't want Keenan Allen in my lineup. Linda?
Totally agree.
Boom. Linda, they need one for their flex with Devontae Adams out, DeAndre Hopkins, Quentin Johnston, or Cortland Sutton. That's
Hopkins.
Hopkins?
I do analysis, but I'm not starting any Chargers, and I think the Jets-Denver game is going to be blech.
Yeah. Chris?
I'll take D-Hop for now. That's where I'm at.
I say I'm kind of on Sutton just out of the target volume. I would go Sutton, but they're smarter than I am. Full PPR pick 3, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bench 2. Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, Jacoby Myers, and Deebo Samuel. Chris?
I'll go Diggs, Amari. I'll go Diggs, Amari, Tyreek.
I'm the exact same method. Linda?
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree.
Right. I love that we're at least getting the ones we all agree on to end the show here. Half PPR, Chris Olave is hurt. Would you start him over Jameson Williams in that Monday night matchup, Linda?
Ooh. I'd probably start Olave, I think.
Same.
I would go JMO. We already know why. Dice dealer, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Godwin, Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Drake London. We have to start 3. That is tough. For me, it's the first 3. Linda?
Yeah, I St. Brown, Godwin, Harrison Jr.
Oh, God. Yeah, the first 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a tough question there. Full PPR, we have to pick 1 in the flex. Jordan Addison, Jawan Jennings, Roma Dunze. You cannot bench Jawan Jennings right now after what this guy just did last week. Do either of you disagree? I like a Dunze, but with Keenan Allen back, it's got to be Jawan Jennings, I feel like.
Yeah, no disagreement.
Linda? Yeah. I say you look skeptical, Linda. Okay. Do we think Devin Singletary will be usable next week against Seattle? We obviously thought he was going to be usable against Dallas, and it did not play out that way. Chris?
Usable? Yes.
Do you want to play him?
No. Let's say usable?
Linda?
Right. No notes. 10 out of 10.
No notes. All right, Linda. Dice dealer, does he keep Eckler out on his bench, or does he go in and add DeAndre Swift since he's on waivers?
If you need a running back, I guess you go get a running back. But if you can escape the week without dropping Eckler, I think that's what I would do.
Chris?
No, I don't want Swift.
I don't want
Right.
Swift, and I do want Eckler. I like Eckler. I like what we saw out of him pre-concussion, so I'm hanging on to Eckler there.
Yep.
Daniel, oh wait, what? I just realized that that's a super terrible review that I should not have popped up on the screen. What a dickhead.
I mean, I do like baking cakes.
I
don't know,
also
I'm
like
not good
baking
at
cakes.
makeup reviews.
I make these really good French pastries called cannelé that are made with vanilla and rum. They're the best fucking thing you've ever tasted.
Can you send me
into
the
it.
recipe, please?
I will, absolutely. Yeah. I've had a lot of fun making those.
Yeah.
Let's end the show on some positivity. Fuck you, Daniel. Jonathan Santiago wants to know, are we starting Brandon Ayuk or Roma Dunze in a full PPR?
Ayuk.
Right. Totally agree.
I think you have to go Brandon Ayuk there as well. I think it just makes a lot more sense. I like what I'm seeing out of Roma Dunze, but Brandon Ayuk is a wide receiver 1, and there could end up being 3 wide receivers there. Guys, that is going to be our show. You can find my friends on Matthew Berry Fantasy Life, as well as SB Nation and Yahoo, because we get the best guests here on Start Sit Different Day. Our thoughts and prayers out to everybody who's dealing with the hurricane. Check out Josh Hudson's GoFundMe that you can find on fantasy or on Faith's page. Long and short, we hope your lineup decisions went well. Everybody except for Daniel Kitterman, have a wonderful Saturday. We'll talk to you guys later.